What? This isn't a Skyfire. Well, yeah, that was the week of Skyfire, but not Jetfire, even though they are kind of the same thing. Not the week and almost one half of another week of Skyfire. That's an even worse name. Don't worry, the What's the Best on Skyfire will come this Sunday. As much as I want to pretend like this was actually me breaking it up so the week would be a literal week, the actual truth of the matter is that I promised to make a video on tracks or Shockwave on the 7th months ago at this point, and I just didn't think about how it was going to actually land on the day that would have been the last Skyfire video when I started the special event. I'm stupid, we all know this. That said, happy birthday to the Soundwave and Shockwave show. I'm sorry I couldn't get a hold of the tracks for the video, but they just aren't available yet. Some people are getting them early, but they aren't in stores around me, and my pre-order on the BBTS has borne no fruit, so I'm going to have to go with the Shockwave. Which I mean is kinda good, because I've been looking for an excuse to review this thing for a while now, and I will be reviewing tracks the moment I can get a hold of one pretty much no matter what. Before I get into the video, two things. The 1-year anniversary of my channel's creation is coming up on August 8th. To celebrate, I'm going to do a Q&A video on the 8th of next month. I know I'm already a bit of an open book, but if you have a question you'd like to see get answered on screen, then there should be a link in the description to the channel Reddit page leading to the Q&A. Ask your questions there, and in a month I will respond. Also, did you hear the news that Ron Perlman has been hired to play Optimus Primal in the Rise of the Beasts movie? I love Ron Perlman, but get him out of here. Put some respect on Gary Chalk, and if Beast Wars Megs is going to be in there too, give it to David K as well. We need to start a petition. We need to get a movement going. If Peter Cullen gets to be Optimus in the movies like he should, then it's only right to get Gary Chalk to be Primal. Make some noise, because Peter Cullen was going to get passed over before fans made a stink, so if we as a community can make that happen, then we can get Gary Chalk the role he deserves. And, if you're not already subscribed, please consider it. So Siege Shockwave was a bit of a shelf warmer, and I'm not sure if it was just because this thing was way overstocked everywhere, or what, because I think this guy is awesome. Maybe it's because people felt like he wasn't justifying the new leader scale. And I mean, that's, I guess, fair enough. At the time, he was definitely the leader justifying it second least. And now with the 86 Grimlock, Kingdom Galvatron, and Beast Wars Megatron, he justifies it, what, 5th worst? Even worse if you include the 4 different variants of Ultra Magnus. And I mean, yeah, he is really small for a leader. Even with the armored upgrade, he's not really cutting it for the size requirement. But I feel like the quality's here. I was actually more excited for the Ultra Magnus when they were announced, but after getting them, I've always found this guy more satisfying. The materials feel a tad nicer. Dealing with him doesn't have the frustrations of all the armored pieces, as unlike the Magnus, they aren't required for him to be the character that he's supposed to be, and even with it on, they hold better, whereas the Magnus's leg pieces constantly needed to be fixed. And this is totally a cool powered up form for him, unlike the Magnus. This figure is a borderline perfect visual representation of the G1 character, really only suffering from having an oversized backpack that the character isn't known for, and definitely being too dark a shade of purple. But at the same time, the shade that it is still really pleasing. I'm super happy they didn't go with the stupid clear hands because that's what the toy did. Toy loyalty is so stupid it hurts me, and I'm glad to not have it here for no reason other than a toy that was designed in the 70s had it. Though I do think it's strange his right arm has a longer shirt cuff at the wrist than the left one. I mean, his regular hand almost reaches as far as the tip of his gun barrel hand. I think that's for transformation, but they couldn't bother to make this one extend or contract in some way? He has the 2 Decepticon badges on his wrists, and these don't work as well as a lot of others because of how much the sculpt of the figure cuts them up. You'd think this guy would have been more popular considering that most everyone but me hated the battle damage gimmick, and the only amount he's got is on the tips of his toes. But it may be that people were annoyed that that's just about all the paint he got, period. Because there ain't much at all on this guy. And you know what? I don't care. Like I always say, I don't think paint is necessary for a figure to look good, and I think this looks great without. I will say that the strip of clear plastic on his chest could have stood to be a fair bit brighter because it always stood out in the show much more prominently, and this is just barely noticeable. But every complaint I just had, I classify as a nitpick. This is great, the proportions are good, the paint is the paint it needed, the sculpt detail is very nice, and the hose that connects his arm to his backpack is robust and flexible, and all his joints are very nicely tight. If I had to come up with one real criticism for the look of this guy, it would be that his thighs are a bit too skinny, and from the knee down, his legs are a bit too big, but that is a very forgivable problem to have. His head is fantastic, capturing Shockwave's unique face? You might think that it's easy to do this right, but I've seen it get messed up before. His ears look correct, and the shape of his head is just the right rhombus. I know this isn't actually a rhombus, shut up. Do you want a boring video, or do you want a video where I do the fancy words? It helps that the face of his eye, I don't know what to call this part, but it's painted black, giving him an eerie shrouded in shadow look. And, god damn it, this might be the best light piping I've ever seen in my life. If all light piping looked like this, I wouldn't even have a problem with it. This figure sucks up the light and directs it so effectively that even when it's in shadow, the most visible part of his whole body is his eye. It could just be that the yellow plastic they used for his optic is especially conspicuous, like an emergency vest. Or maybe it's just a focused single point that isn't trying to share the light between 2 eyes. Though that theory is somewhat undercut by how tiny the actual light collector is. Or it could just be that the particular polymer of plastic is uniquely suited to transferring the light. But it works like a charm. Another thing that's great about this light piping is, as I just mentioned, how small the light collector is. It's an extremely ignorable dot on the top of his head. They didn't replace the whole back of his skull with a big discolored splotch of ugly. This guy's accessories can all be assembled into a pretty awesome purple goblin glider.
We'll meet again, Spider-Man!
Actually, I'm not Spider-Man. Also, I'm giant.
Ah!
Personally, I actually like to think of this as more of a drone than a thing he rides around on, potentially one of many. And basically, if you're not using this as a drone or a hoverboard, then it doesn't really break down into anything useful for Shockwave unless you are using it to armor him up with. So, really, his only accessory is the fact that he has a gun for a hand. Armoring him up is very simple, unlike the Ultra Magnus, and it does really lend itself to being a powered-up form. I do think the shoes suck and should have been a lot taller to give him more height, but outside that, I think this is pretty awesome. He can shoot way more bitches at once like this, he has a giant backpack to power it all the harder, and he has these awkward little side guns. Plus, as silly as they are, the foot cannons have to count for something, right? But yeah, I really like this as a powered-up mode, and it does go a good bit the way towards justifying the leader scale, at least to me. Posability on this is above average for a siege figure, but not incredibly so. Head has a little more downwards tilt and a fair amount up, which you can cheat for more by opening up the chest a little. But more impressively is how far it tilts to the side. Shoulders go all the way up, but no butterfly, and the elbows bend at least a little more than a 90. Legs are completely unimpeded, and the knees bend a tricky 90, where they look like they bent a bit more than they are, and they can bend the wrong way, not quite letting you have the broken leg look, but it does look like he's leaning into someone. Feet only have a really small amount of sideways tilt. It's enough to keep him stable on the ground, but nothing special. So yeah, he is above average on the posing, but mostly in boring ways, with really the only notable thing being the upwards range on his arms. Transformation is quick, fun, and intuitive. You want to turn his arms so the elbows are facing up, that way the front can't bend like this. Outside of that, you just kind of want to watch your fingers. I find that mine get pinched a lot during this transformation. I'm not quite sure if you are supposed to attach the cord here, or stretch it to its absolute most limit and put it here, but I know for sure it won't go here at all. And you end up with his gun mode. And yes, this is his gun mode. Like, what is this? It's totally not a gun. Wink. Bullshit. This is some evil eye nonsense. You couldn't even call it a blaster. This is not a blaster, it's a submarine. Wink. Anyways, his gun mode is pretty close to what you want, though the tip is the wrong color, not quite the right shape, and his handle is really small and very unsatisfying to hold. Like seriously, you do this and your heart just kinda dies a little inside. How am I supposed to go pew-pew with this? It just feels wrong. And the ultra sad thing is the handle is too small for a human and not small enough for a third-party combiner. It's specifically ultra sad it doesn't work with the MMC Assaultus. How perfect could that have been? I'm not going to show you it not fitting, because that would require me to change my setup to the larger figure one. Just trust me, it doesn't work. Anyways, you can armor this thing up too, turning Shockwave into an awesome-looking space dreadnought. It's supposed to look like this, but personally, I find it way cooler to attach these side parts wrong to create these X-shaped side boosters for the ship. I think it fits the new aesthetic way better and makes the ship way spikier. This really gives off the impression that he has mass shifted a ton, because this design just doesn't make sense as a fighter craft or something. This only makes sense as a frigate. This is like the space battleship Yamato of Shockwaves, and I love the look of it. The most hilarious part of this whole figure is the bridge has light piping, in a way that I'm not sure is supposed to be faux forming. It doesn't work as well as the regular head's light piping, but it does have an even smaller light collector. The landing gear is hard to get out, so I like using the plug on the cable to pop it out. It's a shame we didn't get to see this in the show, but then again, the show's terrible, so who really cares? It's just another missed opportunity that the show sidestepped like this. I swear, the show was trying to be as bad as possible. Like, they weren't satisfied with the Prime Wars being the worst Transformer show ever, they wanted to one-up that. Anyways, on the actual subject I'm supposed to be talking about, yeah, I really like this figure. I don't quite get why this was such a shelf warmer. Did it just look bad from a distance or something, or was it just that overproduced? What caused it? Cause from where I'm standing, it's a really good looking and quite accurate rendition of one of the show's most striking designs. It poses better than a lot of its peers, though not incredibly. It comes with a really solid set of accessories, it's not a mandatory parts warmer, it forms the alt mode you want, the base alt mode is complete and has no serious visual flaws like the Ultra Magnus has, though the handle is too stubby and it's not got the 100% correct coloring, and with the added parts forming, you get 2 new, really good modes. It's kind of the best type of parts forming. It's not mandatory. If you lose it, you are still able to form the correct modes without a problem, and it's something really cool when you actually do use it. I wouldn't call this a micro masterpiece. The alt mode is too far removed from the look it needed to have, what with the wrong barrel and tiny grip, but it's butting right up against micro masterpiece. And if you want to call it that, I wouldn't argue too hard against it. This is a really good figure. Maybe a bit overpriced, and maybe people were just a bit offended by its size since it really was the first of the totally not a leader figure leaders. But I don't think it should be held too hard against it, because I think this is probably worth the price, even if I do think it would have been much nicer at $30. This isn't like the Earthrise Optimus. The extra bits here did cost more than a couple cents to produce, and they do actually increase the value of the figure in a meaningful way. Though I guess why people didn't care about it might be since it's not from any other interpretation of the character. That's about all I can think of. I still believe most people would be happy to have one of these things, and I do recommend it. Big thanks to Brian of TFan Page 101 for lending his voice to Shockwave. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.